Freedom's the answer. What's the question? You're listening to Ernest Hancock.
Yeah! What are we fighting for? Here on Declare Your Independence. With me, Ernest Hancock, here in Phoenix, Arizona, where it's nice and chilly. Oh, it got down to freezing last night. Yeah, below freezing. You know, little water features and so on started freezing over. I mean, freezing. Cold, dead plants. Yep. It got cold here, too. Global warming. And you ask anybody, environmental movement, they'll say, yeah, of course it got cold. It's part of the global warming thing. Whatever. Well, they're going to change it to climate change, and then they'll be able to, whatever happens, they're going to, if it's not perfect Hawaii weather, they're going to blame it on something. Now, I want to play this one part. It's Dr. Paul and Neil Cavuto a couple days ago. And he's on Fox, and he's saying, all right, we got to get the perspective from Dr. Ron Paul, on what's going on in Egypt. He was screaming about foreign policy all this time, and what has he got? How many times has he got to say it? How many ways has he got to say it? He just keeps saying it. It's like, look, you freaking stupid morons. What'd you think was going to happen? Well, for decades, you socially and economically engineer these people. What'd you think was going to happen? And to think that somehow here in the United States we're immune is just stinking thinking from the beginning, too. Let's go ahead and see and listen to what Dr. Paul had to say.
It's getting messier, and reason enough for Texas Republican Ron Paul to say the U.S. should stop getting in deeper and cut all financial aid to Egypt now. The Congressman joins me on the phone. Well, that would be a big move, Congressman.
Well, it would, but I'd include everybody because I think we just get ourselves into too much trouble. This is a typical example of what happens when we run an interventions-type foreign policy. We get in the middle of these fights. But we've been in the middle of this for 30 years over there. We've given Mubarak $60 billion, and so we're responsible for a lot of the mess that's over there.
What if we did indeed pull out or stop giving them money? The argument is someone else comes in to our detriment. What do you say?
Well, that may be, but you don't know whether it will be to our detriment. Somebody else is going to come in. The big fight now is for us to be in charge. I mean, if Mubarak survives, we want to be on his side. If they get a new guy, we want to be on their side. So, and I just think that doesn't work because eventually the people rebel. For a while, it seems to be stable, but it's so artificial. I mean, all that money going over there. They have a 450,000-man army that will probably be turned against the people unless they take over the government. And there's a lot of wealth there for a few people, and the people are suffering. It just sets the stage for this. They should be forced to live within their means and take care of themselves. But I would do that with all countries. I wouldn't just cut off Egyptian aid. I'd cut off all aid from the Middle East, and maybe that whole area would be better off for it.
Well, the argument against doing that, Congressman, you've heard this so many times, is that in this case, the Muslim Brotherhood, through groups like Al-Qaeda and the rest, would get enormous influence in the region, a region rich in oil, and we'd be having to kowtow to them. What do you say?
Yeah, that is the argument, but they ever thought whether the growth of groups like this is because they have a target, and the target is us, is our puppet governments. I mean, we didn't have to worry about radical mullahs in Iran until we put the Shah in, and then it took a couple of decades, and finally the people rebelled, and there was a revolution, and there was a blowback to us, and an unintended consequence. So, yes, I think we have to worry about the radicals, but we have to understand how they get their motivation. And their motivation is how they arouse the people and radicalize them is when we take over. I mean, I think the big issue here is how long is it going to take for this to happen in Saudi Arabia? And for people to say that's impossible, I think they're kidding themselves. Now, that would be big news, and that would be major, and maybe that's why some people are discounting that. And I think oil went up, $6 or $7 in the last two trading days. So, so there's something significant going on. There's a lot of concern there.
On the fear of just that. You're right, Congressman. Thank you very much. Good having you.
Yeah. Is this what he was talking about in 08? Blowback? You just keep socially and economically engineering everybody. They don't like it. And WikiLeaks starts coming out saying that's exactly what we were doing. They knew it. Then you have that coupled with a diminishing lifestyle. And what was the one report? 40% of the people live on a couple dollars a day. You have the progressives that screaming social justice, and we got to, take from the wealthy and redistribute so everybody's living on $6 a day. Is that the solution? It's like I just want to bang my head. Well, that's what I do against this microphone, against the keyboards on Freedom's Phoenix, and try and create a structure by which we can understand from many varying perspectives what's going on. Yesterday I had the Zeitgeist on, and after the show, we had the first hour was Charles Goyette. Charles Goyette and I, we've been predicting this for a long time. We've been screaming this. He wrote his book, The Dollar Meltdown, and went New York Times bestseller, translated into Chinese, Korean. I just found Indonesian, whatever the heck that language is. And it was just an understanding of fundamental basic Austrian economic stuff. Giving homage to human, interactions, just human nature. It's just the way we react to different things. We maximize the pleasure, minimize the pain. And you just got to make sure that people understand that pain always comes when your pleasure is at the expense of someone else. Sooner or later, the resentment builds up. Sooner or later, the education gets to a point where they understand where the source is of their poor condition, and they rebel. They always have. They who? The people. So if you know this is coming, you start looking for signs. Well, the biggest sign that you can see, of course, is the man, the central authority, preparing for it. Here comes, false flag operations to justify things like Patriot Act. Here you have, whether they're false or not, doesn't even matter. They'll take advantage of, like Rahm Emanuel says, you don't let a good crisis go to waste. And what does he mean by that? Go to waste to provide people more freedom? When you get a report saying that an armed society becomes more peaceful, do you give more gun freedoms? No, you wait until somebody gets shot and then you want to take them away. That tells you what direction they're going. Things like the Second Amendment is just a Vulcan mind meld, as L. Neil Smith would put it, into the mind of the statist. They do not want you to be able to dissent, to resist. I'm interested in how peaceful this revolution was going on in Cairo. Now, the government is saying they're going, no, everybody's got clear. Everybody out of here. The one way that they did this, they brought in thousands of pro-Mubarak, on horseback military guys, just go in there, and they're perfectly willing to be bashing somebody on the head with a baton. They're perfectly willing to be shooting people. They're perfectly willing to be dropping Molotov cocktails, firebombs on the crowds from the sides of the buildings. They're perfectly willing to initiate violence. What do the people do? Do they retaliate? Do they respond? Are they capable of it? Do they want to? Well, there are thousands of people in the center square where they're saying, no, we're not going to go voluntarily. We'll martyr ourselves, bring it on. Where are they going to go? Well, what life do they have waiting for them? What are their options? What do they see as the future for them and their children? So they're there waiting to die. I saw this before. I'm old enough to see this kind of thing happen. What is it, 20, 25 years since Tiananmen Square? And how were they communicating then? Fax machine. People just, flying out with, papers. Getting the information out, dictating over the phone. The information got out. The scenes the photos got out. This is going to get out sooner or later. Exactly what's happened. There'll be the documentary, the book. And I'll tell you, in the Muslim world, the United States will not be seen as the good guys. It's going to get worse. And as the economy and the dollar goes, it's going to come home. Are you ready? And how will you respond? And what can we learn from this instance? We'll talk about that when we come back.